Hello, my fellow warriors. Welcome to the Warrior Insights channel, where today's topic of discussion is a psychological manipulation by central banks versus the market. Who wins? Be prepared for tumultuous times. Before I begin, I'd like to remind you that this article may be found at athenaangelique.substack.com. The governments of the world think you're stupid. They keep trying to tell the public what they think they want to hear. Repeat a lie often enough and it starts sounding more like the truth. Erase history, change standard definitions of what has been tried and true for decades. Do you remember around July 21st of last year when they tried to change the definition of a recession? While the White House attempted to change the standard definition of a recession, typically defined as 2 consecutive quarters of falling real GDP, by stating that is not the case, they stated that while recession, some maintain, is 2 consecutive negative quarters of falling GDP, that is neither the official definition nor the way economists evaluate the state of a business cycle. And basically, they say at the end that it's unlikely that a decline in GDP in the first quarter, or even maybe the second quarter of the year, necessarily constitutes a recession. Let's just soften that up a little bit and make it a little bit more friendly for you. We don't want to admit the truth. Well, let's just say that they're all in on it. Back in the 1950s, they started something called Operation Mockingbird. They wanted to mold and manipulate the public's perception of reality. What was Operation Mockingbird? Well, the Central Intelligence Agency during the Cold War era, from the 1950s and into the 1970s, began to influence public opinion, shape foreign policy, and counter Soviet propaganda. They would recruit journalists and media executives to spread propaganda and disseminate false information to the public. They would plant false news stories in newspapers and magazines and use covert methods. This would be an interference of the press and undermine the integrity of the media. But do you believe in the mainstream media nowadays? It also says that this operation ended in the 1970s, but I'm going to prove to you that this operation is still in existence today. As we can see, Jerome Powell, everybody hangs on his words. But apparently the decision to raise the interest rates by 25 basis points was a last-minute decision. Apparently they were going back and forth, the Federal Reserve Board, to determine whether or not they should raise the rates. But you know what? If a liar gets caught, they still have to stick with their story in order not to be considered a liar, or at least they think anyway. So, in order to continue with the narrative that the banking system is strong and resilient, they raised the interest rates anyway, because they didn't want to acknowledge the cracks in the banking system and what's going on in the markets. The central banks purposely continue to ignore mounting global economic indicators of recession. More and more data is being released on a daily basis. But why do I say purposely? Because the PhDs of the central banks have just the same information that you and I do about the markets, and they could probably have access to it earlier. This week we saw more cracks in the Treasury market. The United States Treasury market revealed some more collateral runs. For the 4th week in a row, the US T-bill saw an auction low yield of 0 basis points. For the last 3 out of 4 weeks, the US Treasury 4-week bill again saw an auction low of 0 basis points. After the T-bill auctions took place with 0 basis point yields on Thursday morning, it showed another scramble for collateral in the markets during the trading day, as the US 1-month T-bill sank from 4.547% to 4.519%. As I mentioned in my last article, the US T-bill rates are well below the 4.80 yield offered by the RRP, yet the markets don't want to touch the RRP with a 10-foot pole. Why? In terms of collateral, which is enormously important to the global financial system, irregularities in the T-bill market indicate the situation is far from stable. The Federal Reserve is more focused on attempting to manipulate the psychology side of the markets than by focusing on what's really going on behind the scenes. Do you remember that Janet Yellen came out and said, "Oh, don't worry, all those deposits are covered." But yet when the congressman challenged her about the small and medium banks, if that would apply, she said, well, not necessarily. The Federal Reserve had to raise interest rates, even if by only 25 basis points, in an attempt to elicit confidence in the market, to show that the market is stable and resilient. A reverse course at this state would show that it would have triggered the markets to believe that there were cracks in the plumbing. Then we see a statement that came out from the Reserve Bank of India. Again, let's look at what's written, what I highlighted in bold. And I want you to find the consistency in this statement between other central bank statements that I'm going to bring forward. They talk about how the year started as resilient. They were prepared for a soft landing. But then in March, the narrative has gone on a dramatic shift. They talk about headwinds and turmoil in advanced economies. Bank failures and contagion risk have brought financial stability issues to the forefront. Which economy are they talking about? Remember, it's a narrative. Everything is fine. Everything is just fine. And despite Mr. Das acknowledging the instability in the market, he carried the narrative that inflation is still the biggest problem to the economy, that they're going to do a wait and see approach when it comes to inflation. But remember, isn't that what happened with inflation in the first place? Continuing on with the narrative, we see again in this paragraph that they talk about tight financial conditions, financial market volatility. It just keeps going. And as you could see by reading the above statement, that there is no room for plausible deniability. They're acknowledging there are cracks in the system, that they're seeing volatility, but yet they're going to have a wait and see approach. Does that make sense to you? On March 8th, prior to the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, the Bank of Canada put the brakes on interest rate hikes, acknowledging in a press release that global growth continues to slow, labor markets remain tight, and elevated core inflation is persisting. Then we see the Reserve Bank of Australia. The governor, Philip Lowe, stated in this paragraph that, again, volatility in financial markets, tighter financial conditions, and headwinds. Again, we're seeing the same exact words, the same exact paragraph containing these keywords. Central bankers have been chasing the elusive 2% inflation target and soft landings. The consequences of what happened in the banking system failures in March have yet to be seen. Even Jamie Dimon said, the banking crisis triggered by recent collapses of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank is not over yet and will ripple through the economy for years to come. They know what's happening. Then we see the jobs report that everybody hinges on, especially the Federal Reserve, talks about jobs. We need to work on the job numbers. Well, the Department of Labor released the latest jobs report this week, and we see some interesting revisions. The jobless claims have ticked up in the middle of 2022, but then went flat and sideways. This year, even though more companies have been announcing layoffs, job cuts we kept hearing, everything was fine. Here's a small sample of layoffs posted by the Trends Journal, and it shows some big ones. Disney, 7,000 people. Accenture over the next 18 months, 19,000 people. McKinsey & Company, 1,400, and the list goes on. And a new data released this week revealed that more than 136,000 people have lost their job in the first quarter of 2023, which is more than the last quarters of 2022 combined. Job openings totaled 9.93 million, which is a steep drop from the 632,000 jobs that were supposedly created in January. But as we see here, the Department of Labor examined the seasonal adjustments and completely revised the jobless claims over the last years. The jobless claims are now matching an economy preparing for recession, if not in one already. The Department of Labor erased the rise in initial jobless claims in the middle part of 2022, and they remained flat until the end of the year. Around January 2023, the claims began to tick up to around December 2021 levels. And they revised this chart here. The orange line indicates previous estimates, and the black lines indicate the current estimates. But as you can see, the claims were steadily rising over the last 5 months, and the warning bells of recession began ringing around November and December of 2022 when the Eurodollar futures curve initially inverted. Do you ever wonder why, if you look at previous estimates, if they were in conjunction or collusion with the White House just to look good? Listen, the curves are saying the central bankers' attempted manipulation of the market psychology doesn't matter. The market isn't as gullible as they are believed to be. The markets see the conditions as they are, moving in the direction of a 2008 style scenario. Not exactly 2008, but a 2008 style scenario where we see two parts of a recessionary economy and an unstable monetary system in force. And when will the central bankers finally admit it? Probably when it's too late. Remember what happened with inflation? First it was temporary, then it was transitory, then oh my goodness, it's here, and now we have to control it. Right, okay. Well, guess what's going to happen with a recession? The central banks will follow the market, and the tail will wag the proverbial dog. But it will be too late. What can my fellow warriors do about it? Well, I'm going to bring in my preparedness side of things and talk about the following. Examine your investments. Now is not the time to invest in trendy tech stocks or monkey gifts or any type of funky technology stuff. Now, if you do need to purchase technology, let's say you need a new iPhone or an iPad or even maybe electronics, do it now before we potentially go to war with another country, and that will not be available to you as easily. I'm talking about stocks. Invest in things that you know that you will need forever, such as commodities in undercapitalized markets such as shipping, coal, oil, and dividend-paying stocks. In addition, if the entire banking system collapses, have paper cash, silver, and gold out of the system. You maybe want to throw in some Bitcoin in there. This way, you could still pay for some last-minute things you didn't anticipate. You'll be way ahead of the curve if anything in the financial markets becomes frozen, including your bank account, or you can't take out as much as you like, or they put limits on your account like they already do. Examine your personal financial situation. Do you have enough expenses on hand to last you for 6 months? Do you have liquidity in case you or your loved ones are laid off or your accounts are frozen for some reason? Examine your food and fuel situation. Do you have enough toiletries, hygiene items to sustain your family in chaos? Pretend all hell has broken loose and all the grocery stores are closed for 6 months. Pretend there are no doctors or hospitals. Do you have emergency medical supplies, basic medicines to include antibiotics? Pretend the electrical grid has collapsed. We have an electrical pulse. Wipe out the electrical grid. Are you prepared? Can you power your devices? Can you run your home? Do you have a solar generator, candles, backup power, flashlights, cooking fuel, or batteries to get you through several weeks or months? Then here's a unique one. Examine your motors or electronic parts. Invest in replacement parts for your vehicles, power tools such as windshield wipers, batteries, tires, fuses, spark plugs, oil, washer fluids, brake fluids, etc. while they're available and can be found at a reasonable cost. You don't want to get caught on the blind side. Think about things that you use every day and things that you routinely maintain, such as your vehicle or any type of equipment to maintain your home. You may want to think about fuel stabilizer if you're going to keep fuels at your house, and of course, store everything responsibly. I don't give financial advice. I will only tell you what I do personally. What you do with your investments is on your own accord, but at least I thought I could help you, give you a little bit of some tips to make yourself as recession-proof as possible. I don't think you will regret being prepared, even if nothing happens. But the markets are showing us in every step of the way. Now unemployment, the treasury markets, the Eurodollar futures curve, the oil production cuts, they're telling us recession is coming. Whether or not all the central bankers are telling you everything is strong and resilient, we could see that their psychological manipulation won't work on those who are informed. The markets aren't gullible, and neither should you. Visit my main Substack page to explore more articles that I've written that talk about preparedness and what I've done, what I've purchased, and things that I've done to prepare for even nuclear war. I create these videos and write these Substacks to help you become more prepared. I want you to know what's coming, to be informed, and protect yourself and your family. So until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, ever forward.